So I'm Dick Prouty, the co-chair of Town Green 2025, whose goal is to reduce carbon footprint to as close to zero as possible, carbon neutral by 2025. And one of our big strategies is electric vehicles. We believe that by that time, a large proportion will be driving pure electric vehicles, which will be driven by clean energy from the electric grid, that we have other strategies to make as close to 100% any clean energy as possible. And Myriam Alexander-Kearns works for the American Center for Progress, a policy institute that she'll explain, a nonprofit. Looks at these issues and is going to explain to us a lot of the thinking that goes into this idea that Town Green has, and we believe American Center for American Progress. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today. Again, my name is Myriam Alexander-Kearns. I'm a policy analyst with the Center for American Progress. We are a progressive think tank based out of DC, and I work on the energy environment team, and I do a lot of domestic policy focus. One of my key areas is transportation policy, looking at how we can cut transportation emissions. I also do some work on carbon emissions and methane emissions from the power sector. But today I'm here to talk to you about the case for electric vehicles, how they fit into your life, and particularly in Gloucester and the Cape Ann region, and why it makes sense. We'll start with why to choose an electric vehicle, or an EV as I'll call them, improvements in EV technologies, EVs in public fleets, and then the role of Gloucester and Cape Ann residents in getting more EVs on the road. It doesn't have to mean that you go out and buy one yourself. There are plenty of things that you can do and the community can do. I'll start with some terminology. When I say EVs, what I'm referring to primarily is a battery electric vehicle, which is a sole electric vehicle battery, which doesn't have any gas tank. You plug it in every night or whenever you have a chance to charge, and it runs 100% on electricity. That's what we think of as a traditional electric vehicle. There's also plug-in hybrid PHEVs, which have both an electric battery but also a gasoline motor. So you still go and fuel it up, and maybe it takes you 15 to 20 miles on electric charge and then switches over to a gas tank. So it's a nice option for people who aren't quite ready to commit to an electric vehicle yet, but are sort of on their way. Then we have traditional hybrids, which are the ones that you're most used to seeing driving around, the Prius, the Honda Insight. Those don't have an electric motor that you charge, but they do generate electricity every time you brake, and that powers some of the vehicle. Those usually get up to like 50 to 90 miles per gallon, whether it's city or highway driving. So really great options, have lots of much higher miles per gallon than you would see in a traditional internal combustion engine. So EVs can actually fit into a sustainable lifestyle. Cape Ann's really interesting. There's a lot of sustainable options here. You have a great bus system. There are great train options, commuter rail to Boston, Amtrak comes through here. And in the US, car ownership is actually flatlining, which is really interesting from my perspective. Car sharing is also disrupting the auto industry. Fewer people are opting to buy a vehicle. More are opting to take Uber or Lyft or other car sharing programs or carpooling. However, Gloucester is not rated very high in terms of walkability. So a lot of people opt to bike. I know there are great bike routes around here. You can take 133 all the way up. I'm from Andover. I know you can bike from Andover to Gloucester, which is fantastic. But it's still a very car-dependent city for longer haul trips, or if you have groceries or pick up your kids, biking might not actually get you what you need to do. So while traffic is a driving nightmare in Boston, there are also relatively affordable commuter options, like I mentioned before, the commuter rail. So gas prices are low right now. In an SUV might feel like it's an affordable option for someone, although I'm sure a lot of people here are here because they care about their carbon footprint, so probably wouldn't be considering an SUV anyway. But if you are, gas prices, they're great right now, but it's very volatile, especially with the new administration. We have projections here. You can see back from January of 2016 up to July of 2018, it's fairly flat, but some ups and downs, but the Trump administration is probably going to shake things up. We don't know how it's going to affect it. Analysts and look at the oil market, and they're really not sure what his impact is going to be on the oil market and gas prices. So it's definitely not certain that gas prices are locked in. Transportation sector emissions are also rapidly growing. In 2016, they accounted for 26% of all emissions in the US, and they surpassed power sector emissions. So more pollution is coming now from cars and trucks and the road, primarily light-duty vehicles, about 40%, than it is from the electric grid, from power generation. And as the power grid shifts towards more renewable sources, plugging your car in to charge it actually becomes even cleaner. So transportation emissions are really important to tackle to meet both our US climate goals, but also the international climate goals set with the Paris Agreement. Hopefully we stay in it. Massachusetts' grid is very clean, so it's a great place for EVs. This is a great map that I found. Union of Concerned Scientists is a fantastic group of scientists and policy analysts in DC. And they mapped out how clean it is to actually drive your vehicle in every single part of the country based on what the grid is like. So if you look at Colorado here, the darker purple actually isn't a fantastic place to drive an EV because the electric grid is so powered by coal that it's pretty dirty. So every time you're plugging your car in, you're drawing down from a very dirty source. Now, if you look at California, driving an electric vehicle there is the equivalent of driving a gas car with 87 miles per gallon, so it's pretty clean. Same in New England, you have 86 miles per gallon. New York itself is also very clean, 135 miles per gallon. So it really depends where in the country you're plugging your vehicle in. You can look at Gloucester specifically. How clean is Gloucester? UCS also has a fantastic, has a fantastic program here on their electric vehicle page where you can check out and see how clean your electric vehicle is. So I entered Gloucester's zip code, and then we'll go with, let's go with the Nissan Leaf. It's one of the more recognizable EVs, and 2017. And what it shows you is what the equivalent is. So driving a 2017 Leaf in Gloucester, plugging it in Gloucester, is about the equivalent of driving a car that gets 96 miles per gallon. So it's actually really clean. And it also compares how much pollution you are generating by driving an EV, 114 carbon equivalent grams per mile, versus a gasoline car, which is over 3 times that. Plug-in hybrid, also pretty low. Battery electric, that's the average. So it's a really great resource to kind of see, where things are actually a really clean place to drive. There's also charging options in the area. I know that someone talked before, if you were here for it, about his personal experience driving an EV. But there's a great network all over the country called ChargePoint, a membership program where you can plug in your car, and they have great maps on their app, but also on Google Maps on your phone. You can find where they're going to be charging stations located. Within 30 miles of Gloucester, there are 305 electric vehicle charging stations. And there's also charging right here in town, right in front of City Hall. The city offers free public charging. So it's a great option for people who may not feel that they can charge at their home or on the go. So Gloucester has a huge role to play in leading New England in sustainable transportation. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But as I think Gloucester, with all the renewable energy work that the city has done, has a really great opportunity to become a regional but also a national leader. And a great example of things that a city can do and sort of grow. So EV technology, how it's improved. Despite low gas prices, there's still a demand for EVs. They currently consist of just over 1% of the market share. So 1%, 1.2% of new vehicles sold in the US each year, or in the past year, were EVs. So there's still a demand, it's growing. There's a few more added each year. But what that means is that automakers are still investing in research and development. In April of this past year, Tesla actually passed GM in terms of market value. So you can see that they, right at the end there, they started to over $50 billion. That puts them in the top 5 internationally, top 5 automakers.
Sorry,
Market capitalization, yeah. And so they're actually really approaching Honda, and they're basically just growing and growing and growing. So there is interest in the industry. One of the reasons that this has been helpful is because as the industry invests more in technology and research and development, battery prices have declined. Like any new technology, as the technology improves, it's going to get better and it's going to get cheaper. This is a chart that shows the battery in dollars per kilowatt hour, the costs, the change between 2010 and 2015. Just between 2014 and 2015, it's dropped 35%. And as you can see now, went from about $1,000 per kilowatt hour down to just over $400 per kilowatt hour. So batteries are starting to last longer, range is getting longer, the distance that you can travel between charges, and it's also getting much cheaper, which means the cost of the car is also decreasing. Despite this, there's still a lot of range anxiety, we call it. People worry that they're going to drive their cars and not be able to charge, they're going to get stranded somewhere on a highway, and they won't be able to find the nearest fuel source. In fact, though, the average American drives fewer than, I think it's 40 or 50 miles per day. Even if they commute to work, they don't actually drive that far that often. So electric vehicles are actually a pretty good option for most Americans, especially if you live in a city and you work fairly within like 20 miles of your workplace and you're driving into work. So people have this anxiety that might actually not be realized if you actually drive your car and you see how far you can go on just one charge. Some things that the city can do to help this is, they can make charging more visible. This is one of the recommendations I would have for the city of Gloucester is, you have it at City Hall, advertise that. I'm not sure how many people actually know there's charging at City Hall, but there's also an opportunity to add charging outside of local businesses, rest stops, maybe special charging centers on public land, and make it very available, make people realize that it's there. A lot of the questions that EV skeptics have can be answered. We have the answers. They just need to know to come ask them and ask for the information. All the information is actually there. Like I mentioned before, battery range is also growing significantly. The Chevy Bolt, which was the 2017 Chevy Bolt, now has 238 miles between charges. VW e-Golf, 124 miles. Hyundai Ioniq Electric, 124 miles. Ford Focus, 115. Like all different automakers are bringing up these vehicles with more and more charge. The Nissan Leaf started with about 40 to 50 miles of range. The newest version actually has 107 miles. So as you can see, people can go further. Grants and incentives are also available for local businesses to put chargers in their parking lots or in front of their businesses. The fast chargers would charge your vehicle in about 20 to 30 minutes. Those are a little expensive. They can be tens of thousands of dollars, maybe not an option for people who own their own homes. But if businesses come together and want to invest in that, it's a great opportunity for people to come charge their car while they are shopping for 20 minutes. Stop and shop, whatever, or small mom and pop stores if they want to invest in that. It can be a great benefit for local residents. There's also the Federal Workplace Charging Program, which is run by Department of Energy. Again, the certainty of the future of this program is not high. We're not sure what's going to happen under the Trump administration. But right now, they've done a really great job to get employer partners on board to provide charging in the workplace as a fringe benefit. It basically doubles commuting range. They know they can charge when they get to work. As of 2017, this January, 400 employer companies across the country were involved in it. That led to 750 workplaces with over 75,000 charging stations, offering charging mostly free to employees who want to drive their EVs to work. So affordability, battery prices and vehicle prices are decreasing, and there are also federal and state incentives that make these vehicles much more affordable. Right now there's a $7,500 up to that, depending on how big the battery is. Tax credit, it's a federal incentive that anyone can apply for. And then there's the state level $2,500 tax rebate for a plug-in vehicle if you purchase it, again, depending on the size of the battery. So between the two of them, you can get up to $10,000 in reimbursement for the purchase of a plug-in vehicle. Since 2014, and that's actually a really good website. Can I go back to that? afdc.energy. A fantastic website that lists a lot of information about federal incentives and also state incentives. You can get information by state, information by different type of zero emission or low emission vehicle. It's a really fantastic website. It's run by the Department of Energy. Highly recommend it. Go back to this. Okay. In Gloucester, since 2014, Gloucester itself, 20 cars have registered in Gloucester have received the mass rebate, the $2,500. In Essex County, 69. There's many more available, so people are taking advantage of this. The state has also negotiated with through Mass Energy's Drive Green program with different dealerships, that's the word for it, dealerships across the state, they offer up to $10,000 discounts on some models like the Chevy Volt and the Nissan Leaf. So that can be up to $20,000 or tax credits if you combine all the incentives plus the discount, making EVs pretty affordable. So the role of EVs in public fleets. I think there's a huge role that Gloucester and other cities similar to Gloucester can play in getting more EVs in the road. Cities have the opportunity to lead by example, make electric vehicles more visible, let people know that they have a role to play in the day-to-day operations. You know, the central hub charging options, and you can apply the sort of technology. School buses, CATA, whatever other city vehicles actually have fixed routes. If they have fixed routes, you can estimate how many miles they're going to drive each day. It's a great opportunity to be able to charge because you know the charging needs. You can predict those in advance. Helps again with the range anxiety issues. Also, driving consistently the way buses do and being such large emitters of pollution, electric vehicles are a great way to sort of decrease the city's footprint. Other examples of cities this has been a success include Worcester. They are 1 in 10 countries across the cities across the country that are testing out electric buses, and they received a $4.4 million grant from the Department of Transportation's Clean Fuel Program. Again, DOT programs are going to be uncertain in terms of the future of them and how much funding they're going to get. Do have current opportunities that do exist and current money they do need to spend down. They're funding for organizations that want to operate fixed route bus services, replace buses with low or no emission vehicles. Again, this is a way that Gloucester in this technology can be both a regional and a national leader. There are also grants, state and local grants. Again, you can go to that website that I showed before, afdc.energy.gov, and lots of grants for EV charging infrastructure at the state level, the regional level, county level, any sort of organization, nonprofit. There are also creative options. Some cities have done citywide solar farms that allow to be the source for electric vehicle charging, or individual panels that go right into the charger. There are other ways of keeping costs fairly low and the footprint low as well. However, I will emphasize that I think that public charging is really necessary, especially to tackle the issue of people who live in apartments or condos or multifamily units who want to charge their vehicles, but they have street parking. So they can't just buy a charger and put it in their garage. There need to be other options available, and relying on going to the nearest rest area may not be an option for them. So it's something to sort of strategically think about, and some problem solving necessary. Like I said before, the fast chargers for public use might be more affordable for larger organizations or companies, and they would still give residents of like apartment buildings and condos access to that charging. So what is the role of Gloucester citizens? I'm sure many of you already know this, but I always emphasize talk to local city officials. It's one of the best things that you can do. And Tau Green 2025, I'm sure, has fantastic relationships with city officials and the city council, and it's a great opportunity to use your voice as a resident, especially at the very local level when things are so uncertain in the national policy sphere. Come armed with facts. Demonstrate that your need for public charging infrastructure, and show the benefits to the city that it'll provide in terms of tourism. Gloucester really thrives on tourism, especially in the summer months, and it's a really great opportunity for people all over Massachusetts to be able to comfortably drive their electric vehicle here, charge while they're poking around, while they're visiting, while they're shopping, while they're going to a fair, and then be able to drive home comfortably. Also, come armed with the benefits that you can tell people about, that you really want to see electric vehicles in the bus systems and the post office routes and other, which is not a city thing, but there are other opportunities and places that you can really push for electrification for city and state and fleets. You can also call your state legislators and the governor's office, voice your support for EV-friendly policies. In addition to keeping tax incentives alive, there's also other benefits of driving an EV that you can promote, whether it's special commuter lanes on Route 128 or 95 that are for EVs only, or like low emission vehicles only. Public charging at areas I know is becoming more common, but it won't get there until the demand is really shown. And with the market value being so low, the market share being so low right now, it's growing very slowly. People who are interested need to really voice their demand. You can also look into EV ownership yourself. Look into the incentives that I mentioned before, the state, local, federal incentives. find out what's an affordable option for you. There are also plenty of used EVs on the market as the technology matures and we get into the third and fourth generation models. There are some older ones that are still great options, and maybe a first generation Nissan Leaf doesn't have quite the range you want for a cross-country trip, but it's an affordable option if you want to lower your footprint for day-to-day commuting and traveling around the city. Finally, if you're not ready to take the full EV plunge yet, you might want to consider a plug-in hybrid. As I mentioned before, you might find yourself driving the majority of your miles electric, especially if it's for an around town car, looking for a second car for your family, picking up the kids, that sort of thing. For local commutes, some plug-in hybrids have pretty small electric batteries, but they can take you 15 to 20 miles on electric charge before switching over to gas. Other examples, for example, the Hyundai Sonata plug-in hybrid, the first 20 miles are electric, which is more than a lot of people actually drive in a day. Almost every automaker makes some sort of EV or plug-in EV. Usually they make both. And for a lot of models that you already know of, like the Ford Focus, for example, has an EV model as well. Kia, BMW, Hyundai, Volvo, you get the idea. The plug-in hybrid versions can often be $3,000 to $6,000 more than their internal combustion engine counterpart. So it can be a little bit of extra money that in the long run pays off if you find most of your miles are driving electric. So anyway, that's the presentation. Again, my name is Myriam Alexander-Kearns. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take some. If you have any further questions later on, or if you're interested in some of the resources I presented, like that great resource from Union of Concerned Scientists, or how to use the federal website, business cards up here, so you can feel free to email me or call me if you have any questions. Yeah, go for it.
It's more just a comment.
Yeah.
When I bought my electric about a half a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually strongly value.
Yeah.
The technology changes so quickly, but the thing that not many people let me know about is that when you lease, you still get all of these rebates.
Yeah.
So you can do a lease for little upfront money and you're getting $10,000. So it was really an incentive that made it very easy to get into electric.
If that lease option hadn't been there, do you think you would have been less likely to actually purchase an EV?
If the lease option wouldn't have been there, probably not, because I think the risk,
Yeah.
you're spending a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I got the BMW, so
Okay.
in 3 or 4 years, that expensive car,
Right.
Its value may go down because the next, it can get 300 miles or 400
Mm-hmm.
miles. So I think because of the technology part of it, that the leasing for me
Yeah.
was really critical because I don't have to own it.
That's a fantastic point. And every year battery technology is advancing so quickly that, once you start seeing automakers turn over their models so quickly, like the same model but a new battery in it, you're going to see like that you're, even less than 3 or 4 years perhaps, like your range and your vehicle, if you can trade it in 2 years, you might be able to get a new vehicle that has an even higher range than before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
How
Thank
often
you.
your incentives, state or fed?
I got the $2,500 Massachusetts and then the $7,500 federal, and it was just, it was a nice check.
Yeah.
For not much upfront investment. So that was, and then of course I've got the charge point network. That with BMW I can do that for free.
Yeah.
And so I installed it in my house, and that was a huge incentive as well. So I could use that as a write-off as well. So they're really making it in terms of the financials almost like you're dumb if you don't do it. There's so many incentives to make it affordable.
And some states are much more progressive on this than others. Massachusetts does a great job. I know Kelly Baker's been a pretty big pusher for a lot of renewable energy, clean energy programs, including in transportation. That's been a really great thing to see. I live in Washington, D.C., so I've been watching that from afar. Other states are not quite as progressive, obviously. And so that's one of the things I was talking about before, is Gloucester having this position to be, really make a name for itself, even on the national level, as, a normal, fantastic city, but, nothing super, super special about, there's not like a lot of like political wealth or anything here, right? But there's like great people that care about this, and like politicians and great nonprofit organizations that are coming together to promote this technology because the demand for it is here.
And another comment I was going to make was, I don't think, what you were saying with, until we get to a fast charger ecosystem, the public chargers, it's just not practical.
Right.
Because it takes 5 hours, 6 hours to charge your car. And if you've got 2 chargers in front of City Hall, and if we all start buying electric, it's not going to be very practical.
Right.
So with the fast chargers, you know, at the malls, I can charge my car in 20 minutes. And that'll be the big turning point when, you know, then City Hall with its 2 chargers, you know, we can come in, charge, have a coffee, and then, you know, drive off. That's when it will become very practical.
And I think businesses will start to see the value in that too, the value added, which coming, oh, this, you know, in front of like such and such business, charging for 20 minutes, and they shop while they're there charging because they're there for 20 minutes. So, and I think that's also a much better option in terms of street charging for people who live in the multifamily dwellings that I was talking about, the condos, the apartments. You know, having to switch your car every 5 hours, like waiting, it's not really ideal, but the fast chargers will really sort of tackle that problem. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to that. I think you mentioned solar farms. So on our Town Green and Gloucester Green strategic planning process, we have microgrids as the next 2 years, the big step. We're going to be using 4 public properties that have already been assessed as having 20 acres of potential for solar panels. And there's a lot of private potential at all of the big parking lots at the supermarkets. So it's on Town Green's agenda to approach the supermarket chains and see if they would be in for an investment in a solar farm that would both reduce their electric uses for their high intensive use of electricity, which they, if you ever walk into a supermarket, it's like 40, you have to put on a sweater before you go to the supermarket. But also to have people be able to charge their electric vehicles there. And that would be, hopefully we'll get a little bit of arms race going and we'll be able to have them all.
And it's kind of a chicken and egg thing because until you get those chargers in public spaces, I can't tell you, I don't know how many of these cars I've sold now because, you know, the very fact of someone watching me just in a public space plug in and then walk away and they stop me and ask me and go, are you doing this for free? Or,
well, I think that's why this is a 2 to 4 year window, but I think that the technology is going to go down and be cheaper, and you're going to start